Hello, everybody, and welcome to this thematic session on encouraging cross-border cooperation, a topic that we believe is very relevant and is very important to be dealt within this overall conference topic on the role of regions and cities in delivering high-quality apprenticeship for all. My name is Noelia Cantero, and I'm the director of the European Association of Regional and Local Authorities for Lifelong Learning, a network of European dynamic region whose main priority is to provide the citizens with the skills that they need for personal and professional development. If you want to learn more about what we do and what our regions are doing in the field of lifelong learning, please don't hesitate to to visit our website. We are very happy to have so many of you today, and we would really like you to participate and intervene as much as possible. So please don't hesitate to say what you believe on the chat or even ask a question. You are also invited to use the conference hashtag. So let's try to be trending topic today, and use your social media to promote or to say what you have to say. I think before we start, it is important for me to say that the different presentation that we are having today are not going to be dealing in general with international cooperation nor with interregional cooperation, but specifically with cross-border cooperation, which is obviously included within these two main kind of cooperation. So as many of you know, as you all know, crossing borders for work, education, or to receive better healthcare is the daily life of many European citizens. Still, many obstacles to this kind of daily activities of many are still to be solved. And some of those, as you know, can come from diverse national legislation. Others could be simply because of incompatible administrative system. And also, and that's a bit the regional component into this, because of lack of territorial planning. And as many of you know, we have recently lived two very important events that have raised the importance of this talk at political level about cross-border cooperation. So we have the Brexit recently, and also this pandemic and what the different member states have been doing regarding their borders. So the logical order that we are going to do today for our presentations, we will start with a very good example from one big region in Germany, Rhineland-Palatinate, that is bordering three different European countries, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France, and that have embraced digitalization to support this cross-border cooperation. From Germany, we will go to a different region, this time in Italy, the autonomous province of Trento, which is part of a bigger European geographical region with South Tyrol, and that will show us an example of a very interesting project that they have with an even bigger natural European geographical region, the Alpine region. And we will finish with an example of good practices of projects that have been funded by the Interreg Europe program. So thank you very much in advance to our speakers for being here with us. I will pass on the floor to them. And we have today with us Petra Jendrich, who is head of department for vocational schools and securing the supply of skilled workers in the Ministry of Education in Rhineland-Palatinate. Then we will have a double presentation by Ilaria Mascitti and by Francesco Pisanu, both working for the autonomous province of Trento. Ilaria is public officer and project manager of the DUALPLUS project. And Francesco is head of the Evaluation Educational Policies Office and scientific referent of the DUALPLUS project. And finally, Mart Veliste, who is a thematic expert on SMEs competitiveness at the Policy Learning Platform, which is one of the main pillars of the Interreg Europe Secretariat. So without further ado, let's the show begin. I would like to thank the speakers for keeping the time that you have been allocated so that then we have some time for questions and to hear more about your experiences. So first of all, Petra, in the context of cross-border cooperation, what are the opportunities of digital transformation?
Yes, hello. Thank you that you are having me here with you today. I would like, if you allow, I would like to tell a little bit of our activities in Rhineland-Palatinate, how we try to encourage cross-border cooperation. and that's what I would like to start with. We award a label that we call European schools. Maybe you know about it. And these European schools prepare young students for living, learning, and working in Europe. And they have these European schools are a helpful instrument for supporting the European idea and thus giving the subject of Europe more weight also in our vocational schools. And in 2020, last year, 18 vocational schools reached the label European School in Rhineland-Palatinate. And then, you know, the Erasmus Plus program of the EU, and this promotes education, training, youth, and support and sport in Europe. Sorry, and for the new round of Erasmus Plus, we have from 2021 to 2027, there are 22 vocational schools in Rhineland-Palatinate will be part of Erasmus Plus. And then we started a program we call Vocational Back Pro. This is an exchange program that deepens the relations between Rhineland-Palatinate vocational schools and French vocational schools. And the following elements represent the minimum requirements for obtaining the Vocational Back Pro certificate. It's integration of job-related French into 4 learning fields or learning areas, intercultural competence, vocational foreign language teaching, and 3 to 8 weeks internship in France with exchange companies. Since one of the objects of the Vocational Back Pro exchange program is to enable all participating students to experience abroad as an element of the experience of democracy. The achievement of language level A1, this is important, is the minimum requirement for the element of vocational foreign language teaching. And this summer, certificates are to be distributed to students for the first time. It's also planned that the framework agreement between the Education of Ministry in Rhineland-Palatinate and the Académie de Besançon and the Académie de Dijon will be signed this summer. And we started this year with 4 vocational schools, but we hope to get more in the next years with these vocational back pro. Then Mart will say something about Interreg. We have in the Interreg program, we have in Rhineland-Palatinate, we have the project Smart Factory, Learning Factory, and we cooperate with a French vocational school in the Interreg program. And at last, it's something we call Campus des Métiers, and within the framework of the Committee of Vocational Education and Training of the Standing Conference of the Ministers of Education and Cultural Affairs, we started a German-French cooperation in vocational training courses. And one of our schools, unfortunately only one, actually one, we are preparing a partnership with the vocational lycée in Saint-Quentin. That's what I would like to tell about our activities to encourage cross-border cooperation in Rhineland-Palatinate. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Very interesting, different, diverse kind of activities that you are putting in place in your region, mainly with France. So now we are passing on the floor to our second presentation, our second intervention by Ilaria and Francesco. Could you please share the main objective of your DUALPLUS project, as well as the key lesson learned? I think it's Ilaria who will start first, and then Francesco. So the floor is yours.
Yes. So good morning, Noelia, panelists, and everybody is watching. And let me thanks for, first of all, the organizing for inviting us to introduce you to the Atelier of Learning, which is a very practical training workshop addressed to in-company tutors involved in apprenticeship path and processes. And this atelier of learning was designed, developed, and delivered in the framework of the DUALPLUS project, which I will briefly introduce, and then I will leave the floor to Francesco, who will go in details into the atelier of learning. Next slides, please. Okay, so talking about apprenticeship and cross-border cooperation, what comes into my mind is Italy during the Renaissance time, where a young Leonardo first began his apprenticeship at the Bottega of Verrocchio, which was a very famous painter, Renaissance painter. And then, just like, let's say, a modern Erasmus apprentice, Leonardo started moving from the Ducate of Florence to the Ducate of Milan, and then to the Republic of Venice. Like in a mobility, an Erasmus mobility action, he was looking for new inspiration, for new collaboration. He tried to learn from others. He tried to enrich his background and skills, but he also brought and spread his knowledge, his genius, and he also in some way innovated art. So next slide, please. Back to 2021 and back to the DUALPLUS projects. Let's say that the main general objective of the DUALPLUS project, it is also condensed and synthesized in the title, which is increasing the attractiveness of dual education in the Alpine space. So that's a very, let's say, ambitious project, and we then try to split and to be more specific. So we targeted the projects to 3 different target groups, so youngster and parents, SMEs and enterprises, and policymakers and stakeholders. And we defined 3 more specific objectives. So we address a series of measures and activities to youngsters and parents dealing with orientation, because we want to we wanted to improve the public recognition of apprenticeship. We wanted to improve the career guidance and orientation towards this path. And but we also addressed activities to companies and SMEs, and we wanted to bring innovation, and we tried to help them in offering high quality training and addressing, trying to address the training needs of in-company tutors. And last but not least, we also focus on policymakers and stakeholders, and try to highlight some recommendations in order to improve the horizontal and vertical permeability of apprenticeship, and try to foster internationalization and mobility of apprenticeship. The project is co-funded by the Interreg Alpine Space Program, which is a program fostering interregional cooperation. And moving to the next slides. 3 are the main work packages we developed. I'm not going into detail of all the 3 work packages, but just to introduce the Atelier of Learning, I just want to mention some of the activities that we run under the Innovation and Quality in Dual Education work package, the one that was addressed to companies and small and medium enterprises. We established a community of practice made up by vet tutors and in-company tutors. We launched a survey in order to understand and investigate the training needs of in-company tutors. And on the base of the results of this survey, we then try to define and structure a concept, a training concept. Next slide, please. And we finally came to the training concept for in-company tutor, and which is downloadable from the DUALPLUS websites. And in this framework, we launched the Atelier of Learning, which my colleague Francesco Pisanu will introduce you. So I leave the floor to Francesco. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia, and thank you everyone connected today. So I'm going to present you very briefly what we have done in terms of training for company tutors, but also for tutors in training institutions. As you notice, the project is very complex and heterogeneous. So we, at the very beginning, we were looking for a training process that were able to achieve these and to face and in part to connect it to this complexity and heterogeneity. Next slide, please. And so we started to imagine a new way of developing training for company tutors and training institutions tutor, and we based our attempt on an already done example and practice called Change Laboratory, which is a practice of developing new work practices. Was developed by Finnish educational psychologists during the 90s, and they used this tool, this method, to let people coming from different communities to produce new work practices. So for us, this approach was the right way to imagine new ways of training company tutors, to let this training be common with teachers from schools or even with the students itself. So we decided to build up a new version of this Change Laboratory that we have called Learning Atelier. And the atelier means that the focus is more on practical things in terms of content and activities. And now, next slide, I'm going to show you the main features of this atelier that we have done last year, that we are going to release this year in a second version of this training activity. Our approach was quite structured in terms of the preparation, and this structure was due to the COVID emergence. Because in September last year, we were not completely able to let participants be trained face-to-face. So we have to release and to organize more computer-based interactions. So we use this computer-based interaction to prepare their face-to-face interaction. And then we release a lot of content for participants just to be ready to be prepared for the interactions in face-to-face. And then we have prepared the activities in the face-to-face modality, just to let all these participants coming from different communities to be very engaged in producing new ideas and new practices for the management of the learning process of the students inside dual education. Next slide, please. Here, I just want to show you some pictures of this atelier of learning, in which we have a trainer or facilitators, and we have a lot of people coming from different communities. The idea is start to share with them all the insights or the knowledge that they have to produce new practices, to be transforming daily practices during the internship and apprenticeship of students in dual education. So the main role is of the facilitator, of course, but next slide, we have the participation also of the single participants.
And the idea is to let them be free to express all the ideas. We use this wall
with a lot of paper
sheet to sketch all the ideas. We use design thinking strategy to help them in developing all these ideas. And next slide. And we use small group interaction to help them in participate in a cross-border fashion, having people coming from different communities. Next slide. And using different methods inside this atelier of learning, not only the big wall paper sheet, but also post-it or any other kind of tool that you can use to manage the emergency of the ideas coming from people. Next slide for the main results. And we have three main results from this interaction. The first main results is is connected to the direct involvement of the training institution with small and medium enterprises to organize it, to design the apprenticeship activities. The second main result is the definition of agreements among them for a better organization of this apprenticeship. And the third main results is the best focus on the student learning process in terms of cognitive, motivational, in terms of the final evaluation. All these things, next slide, at the very end will be synthesized in a sort of final document in which you can find not only the main learning processes that are been discussed during the atelier, but also the main proposals in terms of practical activities that the participants were able to release in terms of ideas and insights. So we released this document with a lot of strategies that in the future we are planning the second step of this atelier will be applied in terms of practical activities. Next slide, and I'm going to conclude my presentation. The feedback from participants was really good. They were really interested in the new modalities, which were really different than the classical training activity, in terms of more participation and more efficiency in releasing and in sharing ideas and insights to have new practices for the new kind of apprenticeship. And next slide is about the future. We are going to design and implement a 2.0 version of this atelier, proposing them new activities and try to let the participant be more and more aware and active participation in the production of these new practices. And we are going to release a final document in which it would be possible to find out all the main practices that we have developed inside the learning atelier. For me, basically, that's it in terms of content. Thank you. Yes, this is this part, but I think is related to the questions that are going to be shared in terms of the fit that this modality that we have chosen has with the transnational cooperation. And for us, the main structure of the atelier, it is transferable in every kind of context because it is inside a practice to manage diversity, to let different stakeholders and different subjects and different players share ideas and producing new practices. So the basis is using this instrument to let different persons and different communities be more productive in terms of releasing new ideas and new practices, sharing their point of view and their knowledge. This is the very end for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Ilaria. It was a very interesting methodology that you have developed, and I'm sure our audience would like to hear more about that and maybe even replicate it in the context. Thank you as well for traveling, let us travel a bit to the Italian Renaissance and to learn more about Leonardo. And now we are going to travel to other borders in Europe, and now we are going to hear some more examples of this kind of cross-border cooperation and how apprenticeship are also included in this context. So we are going to give the floor now to Mart Veliste. Mart, what can you tell us about the policy learning platform and what are the good practices learned? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me here, and I'm glad to be sharing the good practices that we have. So just to introduce myself as well, I am Mart Veliste, a thematic expert on SME competitiveness on the Interreg Europe policy learning platform. So Interreg Europe is one of these territorial cooperation programs on the European level that's really dedicated to capacity building of policymakers. So to develop better policies, and in this current programming period, Interreg Europe has financed 258 different projects in 4 thematic areas, and that's the first main pillar of the Interreg Europe framework are the projects. But the second pillar is the policy learning platform that I'm representing here today. And on the next slide, you'll get a main overview of what it is. So it's basically a peer learning and expert learning platform open to all. So you do not have to be an Interreg Europe project member to use the services and the tools available on our website. So as I mentioned, it's sort of like a community. So our platform has around 18,000 members who are various local and regional authorities, other important stakeholders as business development organizations or some non-profits and so on. And on this platform, we have various resources, different reports and studies. We also provide free services to regional and local authorities that I will mention at the end of my slideshow. And then perhaps the most interesting for you today is the Good Practice Database, which is a rich source of various practices across Europe in 4 thematic areas. So from environment and resource efficiency, from a low carbon economy, from research and innovation, and then from SME competitiveness that I represent, that can really be inspiring for you as a regional authority or some other organization. And on the next few slides, I will give you a few examples of the good practices available. So the first one is Innovation Boost. It's from the island of Ireland. It's a cross-border program, and it's really to facilitate innovation among companies. And the way it's set up is that you have a company from one side of the border and an academic institution from the second side of the border working together on an innovation project. And really the facilitator of innovation within this company then is a graduate student who will be working with the company for 18 months with a paid scholarship and working really to bring innovation in this company to a new level. And why I think it's very interesting good for you to look into in more detail is, first of all, it's a long-lasting program. It's already ongoing for 20 years. So their methodology has a rich track record. It's proven and could be transferred in that sense. And also the results are very impressive, both in terms of the economic impact for the companies, but also for the students, because the retention numbers are very high. So students after this program are offered a permanent job, and a lot of them accept it as well. So it's also for the region. It's sort of a talent retention program in that sense as well. So going on to the next slide, we have an example from southern Norway. Now, this is not a cross-border program. It's in Norway as such. But what I want to highlight here and what is very interesting about this program is that the young trainee does not go to just one company, but rather the program, when it lasts for 18 months, it's divided into 3 sections. And the trainee will go into 6 different companies in this period, really giving this young person a glimpse of how various companies, maybe in various sectors even work, and which type of working culture they have and what fits them best. So it's a very interesting practice. Again, has been ongoing for 16 years. And again, impressive results in terms of how many of the students involved then keep on living in the region after the program and then keep on working for these companies. So very, very interesting in my opinion. And on the third good practice example on the next slide, that you can also find on our website, comes from the Netherlands, which is a program really focused on internationalizing companies. So again, a young person, it's from the universities in this case especially, but it's a graduate student who then does research for 6 months in their fourth year of undergrad studies. And then after their graduate research, they will be matched with a company for 6 months to really help this company to internationalize. So come up with some export strategies or something else. And sometimes these students are then also positioned to go abroad, either across the border or further out, to really help facilitate this internationalization of the companies. So this is what I find interesting about this practice, is that they really put a lot of emphasis on finding the right student and the right company, and they're putting a lot of effort into matching these partners so that the partnership would work. But again, a good example of how theory can be put into practice, and a young person can quickly develop skills and start their career path. And on the next slide, if you're interested on these practices in more detail, we had actually in March 21 a webinar, a series where the owners of these practices, those who work with these programs on a daily basis, introduce them in more detail. So you can find about how they're really structured in this webinar. And if you are interested also maybe in youth entrepreneurship, then just last month we also had a webinar series on this. So all for the purpose of peer learning and sharing best practices and experiences. And on my final slide are just the services that are available. So once again, they're available for all. So if you have a policy challenge or something that's tricky in your region, you can write an email to us for this policy help desk, and we will share relevant advice with you. Or you can apply for this matchmaking or peer review service, where we take your challenge, your policy challenge, for example, maybe a new entrepreneurship program you want to develop, and we, with the experts we have and other peers in our platform, we either bring them together for you for 2 hours or a 2-day session to really give you tailored advice to try to help and tackle the challenge that you have. So you can find more about these services at the link below the slide. But this is it from my side, and the good practices that we have on the platform. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mart, and I'm sure that we will have the time now in the question and answer to develop a bit more on the practices that you have. Very interesting examples which highlight a bit the importance of apprenticeship to provide opportunities for young people. And that has also made me think about the new Erasmus Plus that has a reinforced budget for vocational education and training, and for mobility and for apprenticeship. So there are certainly synergies and funding opportunities for organizations and people who would like to work in this context. So thank you very much for the 4 speakers. As we have already said, we have around 15 minutes now for some questions that we have received in advance from the participants who have registered. So I would like to then go back to you and to address this question. And the first question is to Ilaria. And I would like to know, is the Autonomous Province of Trento involved in any other cross-border activity in the field of apprenticeship other than the DUALPLUS project? Ilaria.
Yes, Noelia, a lot of initiatives and projects are running at cross-border level where parties taking part. The first one is the EU's ALP, which is the European Strategy for Alpine Regions. As you mentioned, we are located in the very northern part of Italy, in the center of the Alpine region. And the Autonomous Province of Trento is leading Action Group 3, which focus on labor market, education, and training topics. We recently elaborated a comparative study on dual education models, and on the basis of this comparative study in all the countries and regions of the Alpine space, we also then sum up kind of policy recommendation in order to foster apprenticeship at Alpine region level. And next steps are investigating new topics, and especially we want to strengthen the links with the employers, with the world of work, in order to boost apprenticeship and generally speaking, vet education. We are also taking part to the EURegio, which is the European grouping for territorial cooperation, which comprehends 3 mountains territory, which is the autonomous province of Trento, Trentino, and Tyrol and South Tyrol. And on the base of the so-called Stammtisch model, run by the House Builder Forum in Tirol, you may know, we are now offering some practical workshop to in-company tutors. So the first 2 Stammtisch were delivered in Tirol and South Tyrol, and the next one will be hosted in Trento. So please stay tuned with us, and you for sure invite to take part of these initiatives. Based on the Stammtisch model, which comprehends guided tours to well-established company where apprenticeship is applied, or keynote speech by experts on these fields, and so on. Last but not least, you mentioned the Erasmus program, and under the DUALPLUS projects, we achieved relevant goals and relevant results, and we want to go further on this, and we hopefully try to submit a new proposal, let's say DUALPLUS 2.0 under the Erasmus Plus program. We will see how to structure, but for sure we will keep on working on these issues.
Thank you, Ilaria. Now I have a question for Petra. What terms and conditions are needed, in your opinion, for a successful cross-border cooperation?
Yes, thank you, Noelia. Maybe you know the vocational educational system in Germany. We don't have the problem of practical use in our professions, because we do it in schools, vocational schools, together with the companies. But the main problem for cross-border cooperation, it's a matter of course, but it's the language. And actually in our programs, it's the biggest problem to that our young people learn the language, a little bit the language of the other country. In Rhineland-Palatinate, it's French, and we have. I'm not quite sure how to solve this problem, but it's important that more young people in school learn the other language, because this is the basis for not only vocational skills, but for the cultural understanding of the other country. And that's seems in Germany the main problem for cross-border cooperation with other countries. It's the language of the other country.
Thank you, Petra. And actually, you've raised a very important point, and it's these language obstacles. They were also raised yesterday during the other sessions in this conference. I have a couple of questions now for Mart. So, how does one apply to the matchmaking service? And then if you could also bring us an example of a peer review that you have organized. Thank you, Mart.
Yeah, so it's very easy through the website of Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform. For the matchmaking, it's just basically one chat box where you write that you have this regional challenge or you want advice on this. and could you provide me a matchmaking service? And then it comes as an email to us as thematic experts, and we'll get back to you. So it's just a few minutes of writing. For the peer review, it's very similar, but as it's a longer process for 2 days and it involves more stakeholders, it's a bit longer. So you have to submit the formal application of 2.5 pages of Word document, just describing which region you are, what is the challenge, what is the policy that you would like to influence. But again, a very simple application. And just to give you one quick example, this is not about apprenticeships, but this is a different case. We had a peer review in Austria, in Vienna, where the AWS, the Austrian Federal Business Development Agency, were launching a new program to support companies working with artificial intelligence in an ethical manner. And they already had received the funding for that, but they were not sure how to develop this program. What are the criteria? What are the conditions? What might be some risks they need to consider? And so they applied for the peer review. And what we did then is that in January 2020, we brought 4 experts from Finland, from Spain, from Poland, and Switzerland, and we flew together with them to Vienna, and we had a 2 days interaction of really going into detail of what they want to achieve and what are the things they should consider, because the experts we brought had already worked on something similar in their own regions. So that's how a peer review usually works. We really give tailored advice to the issue you have, and the same can also be applied to other various innovation programs, as well as how to set up a very well-working apprenticeship program and how to encourage SME involvement, or how to teach the in-company trainers. Then these are also topics that can be tailored around the peer review through the platform.
Thank you, Mart. We have actually received a comment from Lavinia in Arad County Council in Romania. And actually, she's asking if there are regions interested in developing a project for the exchange of experience for civil servants in the field of business, promotion, investment, and regional development. Could you eventually, Mart, the policy learning platform, help her with that to find partners and regions that are interested in that topic?
Yes, exactly. So the platform consists of thousands of policymakers across Europe. The main idea is that we all have similar challenges in our regions, but we're all maybe trying to work with them in silos sometimes. So really what we're trying to do is get you in touch with like-minded people who have worked with similar challenges before or are struggling the same, and bring you together to discuss and find the best solutions to improve your regional development programs, the way you use structural funds in the region, so all of these. So indeed, we can follow up with this person via email afterwards.
Thank you, Mart. Now I have a question from Francesco, and I think you already started talking about that during your presentation, but we will be very interested to learn if actually the methodology that you have provided through this, so you are created through the Atelier of Learning, if it can be replicated in other scenarios, like in other regions or in other sectors, or...
Well, from our point of view, yes, it is possible, because this strategy, this approach is, as I said, is a way from the beginning, is a way to manage diversity, is a way to produce new insights and new learning, let different people working together, basically, to produce new insights. So if you have people coming from different professional communities, or if you have people coming from different countries, or if you have people coming from different ages, for example, or the difference is the diversity is the main focus of this approach. Without diversity and without differences, it is not so useful in terms of production, and it's not so generative in terms of final learning. And I agree that the language can be a problem, having people coming from different countries, obviously. But at the very end, using different methodology to help people creating new insights, for example, this big wall paper sheets, or using pictures or drawings or other communication channel. This could be useful to let different people in terms of different language collaborate together in producing new ideas and new practices. And yeah, I think that
this is quite useful to be replicated in different scenarios and in different contexts. And at the same time, this could be really useful when you have to manage diversity. And for us, the field of the connection between world of work, schools, and training is more complicated in terms of collaborating, in terms of creating common practices. A practice like this, which is able to create value coming from the bottom, you know, the experience of the people participating in this group, using this approach could be really useful as a empowering device for them. Yeah.
Thank you, Francesco. And unfortunately, I think we are running out of time, and also
Okay.
Mart is weighted in the plenary that is coming up in the main event. So just if you could just very quickly give me, any of you, what you think, a word or a sentence that best summarize cross-border cooperation. So Ilaria and Mart, if you need to go, thank you very much for being here. We will continue being in touch. Just a sentence of a word to sum up, Petra or Francesco?
It's not so easy. Communication.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first thing that came into my mind at the moment.
That's a good one. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and as I said, it's the language and the exchange programs.
Mm-hmm.
First learning one level of the other language, and then exchange programs in the company. Students and companies have to exchange. That would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the speakers. I think all the audience will agree with me that it has been a great session, and the examples you've provided are really very relevant and very good. As we were mentioned earlier, we won't be directly redirected to the main event. So for the audience that are here listening to us, you will have to retrieve the message that you have received with the confirmation, where you have the different links to join the main event, and you can follow the next panel, which is about the good practices that will remain after COVID. You can choose to listen to that on YouTube, or also in the interaction platform where you have different languages. If you want to continue the discussion, well, the organizers are preparing a report that all participants will receive. And from us, I think you are welcome to join the European Alliance for Apprenticeship LinkedIn group, where you can raise the issues and your comments related to cross-border cooperation, and specifically dealing with apprenticeship. So thank you very much. And once more, thank you to my dear speakers. And I hope you have enjoyed as much as I did. So let's continue now in the main event and in the panel. Thank you. Bye-bye.